You're tuned in to Steve Megatron on Altered Geek.
Hello and welcome to Altered Geek. I'm your host, Steve Megatron Phillips, and joining me in this adventure into geekdom is...
Mike the Birdman Dodd. That's right, I'm finally back on this show.
Yes, from the great beyond. He is back.
That's right, and this was always one of my favorite shows to do because it's very freeform and I have to watch my potty mouth. So I won't swear, I promise.
So we thought since this is released the day after, we thought that we would touch on the International Women's Day.
Yes, we are celebrating International Women's Day, which was March 8th. So celebrating powerful women, be it in fiction and real life. If it is basically a woman, or I guess not so much anymore because the definitions have changed. Basically, we're just celebrating people that are powerful, who identify as women, be it transgendered or whatever. We're just here to say, hey, you're awesome. And there's some pretty cool ones that I've seen in the media over the last couple of years. I posted this on my Twitter yesterday. I'm actually choosing a female astronaut named Roberta Bondar. She was a member of the Canadian Space Agency. She flew a number of different shuttle missions over her very long career. And she was the first woman that I remember going into space whose name that stuck with me. And I remember this name from when I was a child as well, because I want to say she did something with either the Space Lab or Canada's Space Arm. I can't remember which, but it's just one of those names that has always stuck with me. Another woman that I'd like to feature, and this is actually going way back into Mike's personal history here. There was an author who wrote a book back in the mid 90s to late 90s called Surfing the Net. And author was J.C. Herz, Herz. And it was basically this woman who was surfing the internet back when it was all BBSs, web pages were still a fairly new thing, chat rooms were still fairly hot. Instant messaging was still very much in its infancy. You'd have like AOL, Yahoo, but it was mostly like private chat room stuff like that. And this woman very much influenced how I approached the internet because I learned about things like CDC, which is Cult of the Dead Cow, which is like this old hacker group. I'm pretty sure they're still around. There was this BBS, which stands for Bulletin Board System, called Zenmu. And basically you would use this board to meditate. And if you talked too much on the board, you could talk every so often. But if you talk so much, you'd get kicked out. It's like you cannot attain zenness while talking. Or if you say the right thing at the right time, it's like, oh, you are enlightened or whatever. And it was just so weird. And I started learning about the internet and its culture very much in its early infancy from her. And it very much shaped the way that I approached the internet coming into the mid-90s and the 2000s while I was in high school. I remember getting this book from my local library. In fact, if I could track down a copy, I'd love to reread it just to see how much internet culture has evolved since then. But my favorite fictional woman of all time, it's actually a tie, if you can believe that. It comes down to Commander Ellen Ripley from the Alien series. I think she's the ultimate badass, especially in the movie Aliens. But the other one comes from the video game series Mass Effect, as portrayed by Jennifer Hale as Commander Shepard.
Yep.
This is a character who I grew to love and respect over the course of 3 games, multiple pieces of other tie-in media as well, expanding upon the Mass Effect universe. It's just one of those characters because the character was you. You could either go Paragon or Renegade or a mix of the two, but your decisions shaped the effects of the Milky Way galaxy against your fight against the Reapers, trying to unite all these different races, the Quarians, the Turians, the Solarians, etc., etc.
Well, not just that, but depending on which way you went, depended on how Shepard appeared.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. It was fully character customizable. Mine was always this drop-dead gorgeous green-eyed redhead.
Yep.
And I was always very vanilla with my romances, though as I did multiple playthroughs of the game, I would choose different ones, but my true love is Garrus Vicarian, the Turian hitman, I guess you could say, or a former police officer, I guess you could say. He was always my favorite romance in that game, although when you could enter a lesbian relationship in Mass Effect 3.
Liara?
No, actually, no, I did romance Liara once or twice, but it was Trainer, the ship's comms officer, I guess you could call her. I always thought she was kind of fun because you can seduce her while you're upstairs playing chess, and you can just walk into the shower with her and have yourself a romantic evening, I guess, if you want to put a spin on it. But I always thought that was kind of cute. I didn't so much fall in love with Sarah Ryder, who was the main character of Mass Effect Andromeda, although I did have a lesbian romance with her too. I romanced my ship's, I guess not the botanist. Actually, maybe it was the botanist. I think it was the Australian, or the chick that had the really cool accent. I can't remember her name. That's how memorable Mass Effect Andromeda was to me.
Well, see, I decided not to play that game.
And you're lucky for it.
Because I wasn't going to pay initial pricing, and two, I'd played Mass Effect 3 and the other ones before, and then one of the nice things was EA Access had Mass Effect 2 for free, like not that long ago, and so I was like, I'll save this for a rainy day, and then I went back and I played it again. Like it took me like, I don't know, 4 days to beat, just because I'm crazy, and then I played as, because I'll usually do like a run through as like male Shepard, and then I'll go through as like female Shepard, and then just kind of just see what happens, just because sometimes the story is different depending on that. And I think, enjoyed it, the game as a whole, and I think that's a pretty strong character no matter which way you go, although it makes it slightly more hardcore if you're the female version.
Yeah, I think you get a better story if you're a female renegade Shepard, just because Jennifer Hale gives a really good bitchy performance. Like, she comes off as a complete bitch. But it's really good, though. Now, if you play that as a Paragon, once again, you get a really good story there as well. But that's not to say she isn't the only female in video games we should be celebrating. If you want a fantastic pair of games, there's the Tomb Raider reboot, which is available on both next-gen consoles and PC. And then Rise of the Tomb Raider, which was the sequel to that, which is yet another fantastic game. And the Tomb Raider movie comes out in just a couple of weeks, actually.
Hopefully it's actually pretty good. I've kind of got mixed thoughts on it. It can't be any worse than the original ones.
I thought the first Tomb Raider movie was okay, but the second one, I remember so little of it as it might as well not exist, which is kind of a poor thing, because I think Angelina Jolie did play a fairly decent Lara Croft.
Well, but to be fair, she fit the physical aspect of the original Lara Croft.
Well, yeah, I mean, she didn't have much of a personality up until the video games later on fleshed her out.
Yeah, but that was because other games were showing that story sold
exactly.
the game, and that's kind of part of it. And one of the other things, kind of switching gears from games, if you go films, you have like Princess Leia, which kind of also doubles the fact that Carrie Fisher.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
don't give a crap, lady. You know, like she may not have been the most powerful person, but like she had a voice, and you couldn't shut her up if you wanted to, and that was kind of the point of it.
absolutely. I mean, if you look at Star Wars, they have a whole history of powerful women. I mean, you got, like you said, Princess Leia, Padme Amidala,
I would
though
almost
not
argue
so
it,
much in the first one.
I would almost argue that Leia is the strongest one of the Star Wars franchise.
I could make an argument for Rey, but she only has 2 movies under her.
It remains to be seen what they do with her in the third film.
Exactly. I don't want to give my full opinions on Rey till there's the complete trilogy for her. But yeah, you also have a lot of expanded universe characters like Sabine from Star Wars Rebels.
She's awesome. Let me just preface this with Rebels is a spectacular series.
Absolutely.
Have you watched the finale?
Not yet.
I love how they tie it up.
Yeah, like I've read how it ends, but I have to see it for myself.
It's spectacular. Plus, they leave this glimmer of hope of something that could take place between episode 6 and 7,
which I hope they do as like a TV movie or something.
Well, if they do another series in between 6 and 7, because you have 30 years plus of time in between there, you could have theoretically Mark Hamill come back and voice Luke Skywalker.
Which he probably would.
Because it wouldn't require him to act.
Exactly. And you could even probably get Adam Driver to come back as Kylo Ren.
And
if you really wanted to.
And well, if you're bridging the gap, depending on what part of the timeline you're playing in there, you know, if you had Harrison Ford's character, you could even have Hamill do that, because he could do a pretty passable Han Solo.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much opportunity for like kind of storytelling in there. I'm trying to think of other Star Wars powerful characters. Right off the top of my head, I'm really thinking here. Sorry.
What's Ahsoka?
Yes, Ahsoka Tano. Yes. I blanked on his name for a second, but yeah, Anakin Skywalker's Padawan, who became very powerful in her own right, and is still, you know what? I'm not going to say anymore if you haven't seen the finale.
I know where you're going with it. You have to watch the finale to get even more added on top of that awesomeness.
Yeah, like there's something there. Another series to talk about a powerful woman, and definitely inspired me to take a look at the sciences a little bit harder, is Dr. Dana Scully from the X-Files. Very, very influential character who definitely got a lot of people. I remember a lot of teenage girls in the 90s wanted to get into forensics because of Scully. And I think that's still cool. And if you say Mulder and Scully, even to this very day, people know exactly who you are talking about as Gillian Anderson.
Well, another one that's kind of an icon in and of itself is Nichelle Nichols.
Yep, from like Star Trek.
She was the first African American on the bridge of the Enterprise of Star Trek in general. She was, you know, the first in space, you know, as of a TV program.
Yep.
And then you know, there were a lot of firsts with her, and that's what inspired like Whoopi Goldberg
as Guinan.
Yeah, as Guinan. And kind of paved the way for all of the rest of the people to be interested in Star Trek that didn't think they had a chance back when it was airing.
Yeah, I mean, Star Trek during the 60s had a lot of social commentary with it. We had the first interracial kiss. We had a lot of allegories on racial tensions told during the course of that show. And it was very, very powerful, got people talking, got a lot of conversations that were uncomfortable to certain people happening.
And it still does.
Yeah, and it still does to this very day. I mean, Star Trek continues to inspire. This year, Star Trek Discovery with Michael Burnham. She's not a true member of the command staff. She's not the captain. And we're following her journey through it. And romance wasn't shoehorned in. It felt very natural. I know there's I can't remember what it's called off the top of my head. It's like the Bechdel test or whatever.
The Bechdel test.
Yeah, and does she pass it? I think, as far as I understand it, because the romance between her and the other guy, it just happened. It wasn't forced.
It wasn't forced, but at the same time, it seemed like a crutch at a point.
Yeah.
And I kind of want to blame part of that on the writing in general for the series, whereas I feel like a much better Star Trek character, and I'm not going TNG because TNG had a lot of the same tropes as TOS, but and so did Enterprise, even for that matter. But DS9 and Voyager, you had Kira Nerys, Jadzia Dax, and then you had Catherine Janeway, and so those three were like, you know, powerful in different ways. Like Jadzia was like, because she was a Trill, she'd lived as, you know, man, woman, whatever, you know, just kind of.
She had the whole gamut of experiences.
Yeah, all these different experiences. So she kind of just was just having fun with life, like, whatever, you know, just kind of having fun messing with people, and then while doing the same job, and then going into, you know, Kira, who's, you know, been forged by war against the Cardassians, and then and had to be tough, and then you had Janeway, who had to put on you know, the full armor of Starfleet just because she was stranded in the Delta Quadrant and had to, you know, be the support for the crew.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much there too. Another series that has powerful women, though ultimately in very different how their characters develop, is Game of Thrones. You look at Daenerys Targaryen, starts out as this very meek girl who is basically given away as a prize to Khal Drogo of help. Blair, what was the name of the people she was given to? Help me out again. The Raider guys. It's gonna drive me nuts. The Dothraki. So, and then you see other characters like Brienne of Tarth, who's this knight played by Gwendolyn Christie, who also plays Captain Phasma from Star Wars: The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi. And then one of my favorite characters in the show, because she's so deviously evil, Cersei Lannister. This is a woman with, if you're not planning 10 steps ahead, she's at least 11 or 12 ahead of you. She's so evil, and she'll do whatever she has to protect her family, to win the so-called Game of Thrones. And you also see Arya Stark, who starts out as this kind of a tomboy, but becomes this really awesome assassin like rogue. You also see Sansa, who starts out as a spoiled little brat, but eventually becomes this lady of the court. Stuff like that. And there's so many powerful women in there too. I mean, I'm forgetting so many, like Jon Snow's wildling girlfriend, Ygritte. She was awesome. Stuff like that. There's the little girl. I can't remember what house she represented, but she came to the Starks' help. She's like 8 years old and basically told off a room full of men that I'll stand with the Starks until the day that I die. If the rest of you don't, you're all cowards. And this little girl convinced all these old men, you know what, maybe we're wrong here. And I thought that was pretty impressive. Other properties to kind of talk about that have really powerful women in them too. Look at the Hunger Games. Katniss Everdeen. Harry Potter. Hermione Granger.
Well, I would almost argue with the Hunger Games, though. They kind of put her in this weird, like...
she was forced into it.
Well, into one, and then she, you know, there was still the trope between her kind of boyfriend friend that was in their district, and then the one that,
Peeta, yeah.
Well, Peeta, and then the other guy that one of the Hemsworth.
Yeah, whose name is not even worth remembering right now.
But yeah, so I mean, it was kind of that same trope. Now, if you go a different series, like you could go Agent Carter.
Yep.
who
from the Marvel universe.
Yep,
so.
from the Marvel universe, who can hold her own. You could go Black Widow. You could go,
Gamora.
Yep. I believe Jessica Jones, but I don't watch
Yep.
any of that, so I mean I kind of gathered that from the character, but
Yeah, Jessica Jones, definitely a woman who can handle herself, very much strong, independent, doesn't need a man, and is very much in solving her own problems. Very much enjoying Jessica Jones season 2, which just dropped on Netflix as of this recording yesterday. Which is, I think, a fantastic progression for the Marvel MCU. Also, Ming-Na's character of Agent May on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
oh yeah, totally.
I think she's the strongest female character on that show, as much as I like Daisy and Simmons.
Yeah, they just seem too young and I don't know, like they can't get down to business like Agent May. Agent May could literally take out, like, you know, that's why they call her like the army, you know, it's the cavalry, you know, because
exactly, she walks in there and kicks everything.
Yeah, and so like nobody can take, you know.
And there's one franchise we haven't mentioned yet, which is the ultimate strong woman, in my opinion, and also the strong woman that's also vulnerable as well, the Terminator, Sarah Connor.
Mm-hmm.
This young woman who was forced into these dramatic circumstances to basically, hey, your unborn child's going to be the one that saves the world. It's up to you to make sure that he gets there. Stuff like that. And if you watch the first two Terminators, Linda Hamilton's performance as Sarah Connor, so drastic, from this meek little girl, like, oh my God, there's this monster chasing me, to she breaks out of that mental hospital and takes on the T-1000 with a shotgun at one point.
Well, and
almost knocks him in the lava.
Well, and the funny part is that's why she's coming back to play the character.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so glad Linda Hamilton's going to be back. I mean, there's so much.
That's probably the only logical direction to go with it, though.
Mm-hmm.
Is to have her, like, skip the whole John Connor thing. Just go straight to her, showing, you know, that, yes, there's such a thing as an older, you know, strong woman icon.
Exactly. I mean, it's going to be neat to see her again portray that role, and I'm honestly super, super looking forward to it. I guess to shift gears to comic books, countless. Yeah, Wonder Woman, Batgirl.
Batgirl kind of got, I mean, she's strong, but she, you know, she did get neutered at one point because they had to add the whole, you know, Joker backstory and then the Batman love triangle thing, and
yeah.
So like, it made it too convoluted. But anyways, she still, even with the paralyzing aspect, still was a highly intelligent, powerful person in that of Oracle.
And that too. I mean, she's also a paraplegic. Although I think she walks now. So that's how much out of touch I am with comic continuity, which changes week to week anyway.
Well, yeah, especially when DC and Marvel seem to reboot their universe every 3 years.
Yeah, so, but you also have Jean Grey. You've got multiple X-Men characters, like my favorite being Psylocke.
Well, and they've even
she's a ninja.
And they've even turned Mystique into one in the recent years.
Yeah, so she's always been a super cool character, like that awesome shape-shifting. As who's the actress who portrays her again? Jennifer, help me out here. Jennifer Lawrence.
Yes.
I think she did an awesome job in all the X-Men movies.
She tends to play a lot of strong, battle-ready women.
Mm-hmm. And that's her thing. And you know what? I'm totally cool with that. I am on board. Same with Emilia Clarke, who plays Daenerys Targaryen when she played Sarah Connor. I was on board for that and still am, but she's not coming back. So,
no.
Oh well. But yeah, like Wonder Woman being one. I'm trying to think of other DC characters off the top of my head.
Well, you have Raven.
Yep, Raven. Starfire.
Yep.
Batwoman,
Batwoman.
yep. who's a character I'm not super familiar with. All I know is she's like a mute ninja.
Batwoman's well, she's the LGBT character of the Bat universe, and she's also kind of constantly butting heads with Batman. Because she's taking on the Bat mantle, but she also doesn't have the same methods, I would say, to where Batman kind of disagrees with her quite often.
I take it she's more brutal.
Yes, she's like the Jason Todd of the group.
Oh boy, I'm trying to think. Scarlet Witch is one from Marvel, which is I love Elizabeth Olsen. I love her portrayal of her.
I do too.
I just think she's cool. Plus, I like the way her powers look. Jubilee from the X-Men, though now she's a vampire, and I fell out of. Yeah, it's really friggin' weird. If you read some of the Marvel Comics stuff from a couple years ago, I'm like, okay.
I had to stop reading comics. It was just getting painful after a certain point.
The only comics I was reading and I stopped, unfortunately, was the My Little Pony and Street Fighter and Ghostbuster stuff. Which, hell, there's a group of powerful women, the 4 new Ghostbusters. You say what you will about the reboot, at least the characters are fun. Which I think is kind of neat how there's that crossover comic happening with IDW, where they bring the Ghostbusters universes all together.
Then if you go with G.I. Joe, you have Scarlet and Lady J.
And the Baroness.
Now,
who's the name of that female Dreadnought? I can't remember her name. It's gonna bother me because I can see her face. Zorana, badass looking chick. Trying to think. There are so many out there.
I think that they get glossed over just because there's so many prominent male characters.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that they all get glossed over, but some more than others.
Exactly, and that's rather unfortunate. I mean,
I think that's why Mass Effect is such an interesting dynamic, is because you can either be one or the other, and that's it's whatever you feel like playing that particular save. And that's kind of the fun thing with like games like Star Trek Online, the MMO RPG type thing. You get to fashion your character however you want.
Yeah, I mean, one thing, I'm glad Mass Effect gave us the chance to experience that story how we wanted to do it, be it as a man, as a woman, be it as gay or straight, or even if you don't want to pursue romance, you don't have to.
Nope.
Which I think is kind of an option there. I actually did that one playthrough. Every romance I turned down after my true love died, after Caden died. I played as FemShep, and I chose to stay alone because I was so heartbroken. And it's kind of cool to get into that mind space of doing that with a character, or falling in love again with Mass Effect 2, picking it up once again with Garrus, who you couldn't romance in the first game, but you can definitely do it in the second and third games. It's cool because there's some really touching character moments, and I think this is probably a comment that'll incite some people, so this is my opinion. I think you get some better stories with women. Like I said, some of my favorite movies, The Terminator, Aliens, are with powerful women. And I think that's just so badass. And it wasn't until I became more cognizant of Hollywood theory and just how the movement towards equality, especially in the last couple of years, has really changed. I've become very media aware of it. And I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I've been pro-feminist and all this stuff for years without realizing I have to beat people. I don't have to beat people over the head with it. I just have to be like, you know what? It's cool. And I'm glad my stories have representation. I'm glad my stories are just as cool as the male-dominated ones. It doesn't all have to be John Matrix from Commando saving his little girl and all this crap. It can be just as awesome with a different sex in the same role. I mean, I wonder what's going to happen with that female Expendables movie whenever that gets made. Or if you want a female action movie that's literally as ridiculous as Commando, the Resident Evil movies with Mila Jovovich.
Those are insane.
She might as well be John Matrix or friggin' Neo at this point. So
they're rebooting that universe with somebody new now.
Thank God.
Now that they've finished that storyline. The last film was terrible and great at the same time because the last two were like WTF.
See, that entire series was hot garbage, and not because of Mila Jovovich. It's because they took the source material and just took a huge steaming pile on it.
Well, there's no continuity between it all.
None.
Because you get random characters from the games that just randomly show up for one movie, and then they're never referenced or seen again.
Yeah, I mean that's such an unfortunate thing because Resident Evil has powerful female characters in it too, like Jill Valentine, Claire Redfield.
Well, Claire Redfield was in most of it. Jill Valentine was in the second one, and then they had Chris Redfield show up in the third or fourth one, and
then he dies.
He didn't die.
Oh, I thought he did.
No, he didn't die, and then they just never brought him back. I was like, where did he go? Because it was driving me nuts. Because it was the guy that played Michael Schofield on Prison Break, who was adept at getting out of jail, and so that's what he did in the movie he was in. He got out of jail out of Resident Evil.
Which is rather good casting, I think, to have him play Chris. But yeah, I mean, if you play Resident Evil Nemesis, you get a really cool story where Jill's being chased by the Nemesis tyrant. Or if you play Code Veronica, you get to see Claire's story as she goes to Rockford Island. I would argue Sheva from Resident Evil 5 is kind of a shitty female character just because she's blander than bland. Sherry Birkin gets interesting in Resident Evil 6 because they bring her back in the game storyline after like 15 years. And I was always happy in Resident Evil 2. There wasn't a romance between Claire and Leon. It was like, we're going to survive. We're going to be friends. And that's it. It's a survival situation, and they didn't force a romance in there. Now, you could argue Leon and Ada Wong, but Leon was like, hey, I will help you. I am a hero. But that's a conversation for a different day. I could talk about Resident Evil and problems with that series for hours. I'm such a fanboy with that series. Trying to think what else I can really say about really good female characters.
I don't know. I think there's quite a few out there, and if we're missing any, you can email us, feedback@alteredgeek.com, and let us know what ones you think should have been mentioned, or ones that stand out to you that we may have missed.
Yeah, exactly. Like, let us know which is an underappreciated woman from film, television, video games, comic books, basically any piece of media that you can think of, or if there's a woman from history you think we should have mentioned. Like, I wish I could have talked about Rosa Parks, a very important part of your civil rights movement in the United States, but I just don't know a lot about her because I haven't read a lot about her. And that's unfortunate. And I admit my ignorance in that. But this has been a heavy topic in a lot of ways, but it's been a fun topic in a lot of ways.
It's light, but it's also, it touches on a lot of different dynamics that kind of go on in not only media, but just in life in general.
Exactly. So hopefully you celebrated Women's Day today by doing something nice for someone, or watching something, or learning about something. Hopefully we've taught you something, or at least have got your interest piqued in learning about one of the women that we've talked about today. So I guess for Altered Geek, I've been Mike the Birdman Dodd with
Steve Megatron Phillips saying, get altered, get geeky with the Altered Geeks.